Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3, on location, or at least I'm on location. I am poolside in lovely South Florida. Ari's at home.
Yeah, it's there's been an inch of snow here in Dallas and the city shut down. So you've got a really good Dan Labitard thing going on right now.
Yeah. I think
that like Miami vibe.
By the
Miami
way,
Vice,
as
one new show.
As we do this, Doug Lesmerises, the one of the kings of the North, is taking a photo of me, probably to post to social media to make fun of my my great mobile office here. But he's here. Doug, come here. We need you to. I told Doug, Doug came on the show and he made everybody mad. But I think we need to let Doug take a little victory lap here. So, Doug, pull up a stool.
Hey,
we're at the Tiki Bar.
Hey, Doug. I did 2 shows from this Tiki Bar, so I love this spot.
Of course, Doug already used the Tiki Bar. Like, I think that I've got something going here. He's already done it.
Yeah. Just like I already told you, the North was going to dominate college football this year. So I'm on a roll, brother. What can I tell you?
Are you enjoying, Doug? Like, one of the funniest things about the North dominating college football, which you did call it on the show, the SEC folks not acknowledging that Texas is part of the league.
No, I would be embracing. Yeah, it's the new member of the family. I don't know why you would be turning a cold shoulder to them, because you got to take what you can get, man. I don't know what to tell you. Take what you can get, SEC.
He's really enjoying this. I said, let's talk after bowl season. Bowl season's happened. Like, you won.
Yeah, no, and at the very least, I've had my ticket for Atlanta for a while. At least there's going to be one Northern team there. So that's good, and we might get we have a really good chance of having 2 Northern teams there. But also, just as a reminder, and I'll let you do your show, get used to it. This is the new norm. It doesn't mean the North is going to win 10 straight national titles, but we're all back to even, brother.
Well, so if that's the case, if the North is going to dominate from now on, I reiterate my request. Can the South have Provo?
If the North wins like 5 or 6 straight, we might give you BYU as a present. Feeling bad for you guys.
Can we take Salt Lake too? Just so we can have Park City?
Yeah, we might. We may be very generous. Check back with me in 2 or 3 years, but we may be feeling sorry for you guys. So we'll see how it goes.
Thank you, Doug. That's Doug Lesmerises, one of the kings of the North.
Ask him if he's going to Disney World on his way home real quick.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Doug's a Disney adult. Are you going to Disney World on the way home? Okay. All right. I'm a Universal guy. The fairy farts don't do it for me. Ari, I'm here for the Notre Dame Penn State game, obviously. Very excited about that. I talked to our friend Audrey Snyder, the Penn State beat writer for The Athletic this morning. We were talking about Drew Aller. Same stuff that you and I keep bringing up on the show. And, Audrey's with me. She thinks, okay, he says he's coming back. He's coming back. The idea of Drew Aller balls out the next 2 weeks, like if they win tonight and then they play another game and he's unbelievable, I'm still fascinated by that whole scenario.
I think if they win the national championship with no knowledge whatsoever of like what's happening internally, like I think he would bounce. Like, what's the point? Like at that point, like you did it, like that.
He's an Ohio guy. Like if he let's say they beat Ohio State for the national title, which I realize we are putting the cart way ahead of the horse here. But like, what do you have left to prove at that point?
And I guess like if this is strictly a financial decision and he thinks that coming back to Penn State, like maybe his NIL command goes through the roof,
but maybe it's not. That's the other thing. We've talked about it like it's a financial decision, but maybe it's not. Some people are just comfortable. Some people don't view the world through, I have to make the most money possible. I'm sure financially he's comfortable as the quarterback at Penn State. This is not 20 years ago. So,
and if you win a national title, your NIL income probably skyrockets, right?
Yeah. Now John says we're putting the cart way ahead of the horse. He says Notre Dame will smash Penn State tonight. I don't know. I feel like this game is a coin flip. As we've talked a bunch of times, it feels like the Spider-Man. But oh man, look at Marcus Freeman. Look at this photo of Marcus Freeman that we're showing. Ari, you're a man who believes the handsomer coach tends to win. That's a handsome coach.
Yeah, James Franklin's handsome too. I don't think he's
They're
not
both very handsome. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, James Franklin looks like a legit TV and movie star because he and Keegan-Michael Key look almost exactly alike.
when Keegan-Michael Key ran full speed at the Penn State spring game, I don't know if you've ever seen the clip of that. Like, it was the funniest thing ever because, like, they look so much alike, but also, like, the way he was, it was so funny. But, you know,
IJP, I like this. This is great. If Penn State wins, this isn't a big game. If they lose, it was a big game. Schrodinger's James Franklin. That is
well, if it makes him feel any better, you know, Ohio State also plays that game with Ryan Day, and like other coaches play that game too. Of like they never win the big game, and then when a big game happens, then it doesn't count as a big game because it's not a true big game. But I feel like if Penn State wins tonight, there is no discussion whatsoever about what James Franklin did this year, right? Like you could still say, yeah, well, they had an easy path. But if they win tonight and advance to the national title game, I don't care what your route is. If you win 3 playoff games, that's really
get off his ass if they win tonight. Yeah. Seriously, get off his ass.
I don't even know. I feel like you should be off of his ass anyway, because Penn State making the semifinal is a huge step to uncharted territory, regardless of path. And then at the same time, too, they return a large portion of their team next year. And Drew Aller, as we say, sit here at the moment, it's coming back. They're going to be really good again. So, like, as you always say, and I think it's really smart, and, how many times can you knock on the door? I think Penn State's been on the driveway. This is the first time they're knocking on the door, but if they can keep knocking on the door, then they'll break through, and hopefully this turns into, being able to acquire certain players at positions of great need in the future as it pertains to recruiting. Hopefully this turns into Penn State being a more viable option for top tier transfer portal targets. Like, if you are, one of the things that I heard, and I don't know if you ever buy into this, but during the expansion of the 12-team playoff is with more teams in the field, it's going to give other teams that wouldn't have otherwise been in the 4-team field a bigger platform or sales pitch. Like Penn State got into the playoff this year as a result of the 12-team field. You think they would have gotten in either way? I don't, but they're in. Now they're making the most of a opportunity that they may not have had this playoff field not existed. So does that just mean they get to play 2 or 3 extra games and create some more memories? Or does that mean that they have a stronger sales pitch to, improving their program and getting players they otherwise may not have gotten to? Like, is this the first step of the stock chart going through the roof, or is this just a fun story? I don't know. I don't know if you think deep runs in the playoff correlate to easier time getting players or not. I've never really known if I believe that, but
we can discuss that in a bit, because I have a question in Dear Andy and Dear Ari that actually addresses that. I think that's a good, let's put a pin in that right now. First, I want to go to one of my favorite Dear Andy, Dear Ari questions we've ever gotten. It's from Brian. This is a Dear Andy, Dear Ari episode. I apologize. It's been 3 weeks since we've done one of these, but the holidays and the playoff, it got in the way. But we had this question from Brian, and when it came through, I just was like, this is perfect. Has any team ever won the national title during the same season that their own fans were completely ready to see the coach fired and chanting things like insert head coach name here? Because we have 2 different schools in the semis that were in that place earlier this season. And he's talking about Ohio State and Penn State. Like, I don't, was Penn State as bad this year as it was last year? I know it was really bad after they lost to Ohio State this year. I remember it being awful last year. I was at the Michigan game, and they're booing the play calling in the second quarter of a game that they're in, that if they win, they're in the driver's seat in the Big Ten. Like, they were so out. And then I feel like this year after the Ohio State game, they were very much out as well. I don't know that they were in F. James Franklin territory, but they've certainly been there in the past and in the recent past. And Ryan Day, well, they've been there in the last 5 weeks. So it's possible, Ari, like, one, they might be playing each other for the national title. So it might be a guarantee that one of them wins the national title. But has anybody gone from the doghouse to confetti in the same season in college football? I can't remember it.
So I think that it's interesting because, like, in the Ryan Day column that I wrote off of the Tennessee game, my lead was this position of like, hey, half the fan base wants you fired and you're 3 wins away from national championship. But I have a theory about this. Like, I think that like Ryan Day was at a boiling point, and I think that James Franklin just exists over the year in like a low heat area, right? Like Ryan
simmers.
Day was not.
James Franklin just simmers.
Yeah, like constantly, because I think that the fan base in general has gotten to a point where they were tired of not banging through the door. Right. Like they're just, how many times can we win 10 games and lose every big game in our regular season schedule? And to a certain extent, Andy, it happened again this year. Right. Like they played a bunch of games. They won all their games. And then like they played Ohio State and lost. And it's like, they want to win that game. Ryan Days goes from, hey, everything's great, everyone, to like, holy shit, they lost to Michigan. Like this guy just can't do it. Like, I think it's a different scenario, but like, Andy, I think it's easy to forget now that Penn State's made this run, but you saw the clips of Franklin and the fans after the Ohio State game this year. It was a pretty low point. Yeah. So, I don't know. I think that James Franklin has done enough right now to shut that up. Like, I think that like he's already absolved. And I think you can maybe make the case too, that even if Ryan Day were to lose to Texas on Friday night, that he might be out of the doghouse too, at least for the time being. So I don't know where you stand on this, but it is kind of a peculiar situation.
It is weird. And I was going back through, like, I think there've been some examples in pro sports where you've had a coach who was kind of on the hot seat early in the season, and then they've turned out. I feel like the longer season sports, your Major League Baseballs, your NBAs, where you can have a bad run at the beginning of the season and then go on a run at the end and wind up winning a title. I think it's easier to have that situation happen. It's very hard in college football. In college basketball, we did have Dan Monson get fired and then coach his team in the NCAA tournament. Like the getting fired, win the conference tournament, make the NCAA tournament. We've seen that a few times. But yeah, I think Ryan Day and James Franklin are obviously perfectly fine in terms of their job security status. In terms of how the fan base feels about them, they're going to always want more. And Penn State wants off the plateau. And I think they're off the plateau. They're in the Final Four because this is a place like Ohio State's been in this place, and Ohio State's been in this place under Ryan Day. They were here a few years ago when they lost to Georgia in the Peach Bowl, and obviously, look, if that field goal goes in, I have no doubt that Ohio State would have dump trucked TCU and won the national title. So they're that close, and obviously they made the national title game against Alabama in 2020. I don't know that anybody was beating that Alabama team in 2020. But they did make it to the national title game. So Ohio State's been here. This is expected for them. Penn State hasn't been here. Penn State has not been able to make the 14 playoff, but now they're in the 14 playoff because they had to play their way and win 2 games to get to the point where now there's 4 teams left and they're one of them.
You know what I've been thinking a lot about this week? So last year when Ohio State lost to Michigan, it was a pretty low moment because Ohio State thought it was good enough to win it all last year, right? They lost to a really good Michigan team that wound up winning the national championship, and I do believe that sometimes really good teams just lose to really good teams, Andy. But the circumstances around that game were massive because of the Connor Stallion stuff and, all the vitriol between the fans. Like, it felt like that had the most hype of any game outside of maybe the 2006 game where they were 1-2. But then in the offseason, Ohio State went out and went on a tear and got a bunch of really good players. They got Caleb Downs and they've got,
Quinshon
Judkins and Will Howard. And it was like they won the offseason last year, and winning the offseason called off the dogs, right? They're like, okay, last year didn't go as well as they hoped. 3 in a row to Michigan's unacceptable, but next year we are going to have so many good players that nobody's going to be able to beat us. So like Ohio State came into the season with a national title or bust mentality because of the sheer number of good players on their team. And like, then they lost to Michigan again, right? And then Ohio State now has advanced to the semis, and people seem to be okay with Ryan Day as a result of the 2 games they just won. But if you really remember, the baseline for what Ohio State wanted to accomplish this year was getting to the Final Four. Like they've gotten to the place
and I would argue
were supposed to get to.
The baseline is get to the final. and still probably you got to win it.
So what I think is interesting about
this season's expectations.
What I think is interesting about the Ryan Day discourse is that before the year, if Ohio State would have just gone undefeated or lost to Oregon and then beaten Michigan and then gotten to this point, and then if Ohio State were to lose to Texas in the same game, that people would have gone ape shit. But as a result, and maybe they still will if they lose, but as a result of losing to Michigan, Ryan Day then earned back a bunch of goodwill by beating Oregon and Tennessee on the way to this point from a fan base that had given up and now has almost put himself in a position where he has less pressure in this game than he otherwise would have. Is that galaxy brain?
I don't know if it's galaxy brain. I think it's something we haven't talked about in terms of how the 12-team playoff affects things and how things are different now. There's just more bites at the apple now. There's more data points. There's more ways to get back if you're in trouble, and there's also more ways to piss everybody off if they're already mad at you. So it's sort of a double-edged sword, but like Ryan Day has used this and losing to Michigan, not being able to play in the Big Ten championship game, not being able to get a bye, like it allowed them to have that game against Tennessee where they could show their home fans, hey, look, we're pretty damn good. And then it allowed them to go to the Rose Bowl and kick the crap out of Oregon, which, that was
Ohio State was played in Indianapolis. To be really, really good. The games that we watched the last 2 weeks was the baseline of the expectation of what they were supposed to be.
Well, no, they were supposed to be this, but we hadn't seen this. And so that was part of the anger. It wasn't just losing to Michigan. Obviously, losing to Michigan was the most part of it. But part of the anger was you have all this. So where's the dominance? Why have you not taken advantage of all this? Well, now they have. Now you've absolutely seen what that looks like when they take advantage of all of their talent. And it's like, oh, okay, you can do this. So I think it's
interesting that we came into the season. I think it's interesting that we came into the season saying national title or bust for Ohio State. And then we got to the playoff and it was national title or bust. And now Ohio State's looked awesome in 2 games. And now it's no longer that. Like
I still think it's national title or bust. I think they'll freak out if they lose to Texas. And I don't blame them. They should beat Texas. Like the way they're playing, they should beat everybody. I don't blame them if they get mad. Now, should they get so mad that they want to fire the coach? No. Let's be real here. But I don't blame them if they get mad because they have the most talent. Like you've said this a bunch of times, and I don't think people quite grasp the nuance of it sometimes. You've said this is sort of the last team of an era, the last prohibitively crazy talented team of that era, because a lot of these older guys got there before NIL or just as NIL was dawning, and it looks more like one of those Saban Alabama teams or one of the Georgia teams that won the national title, where they have a prohibitive talent advantage against almost everybody they play. We may never see a team like that again because the market's changed. Like it's just harder to have that, many NFL starters on your defense, because let's be real here. Half of Ohio State's defense could be starting in the NFL right now. They chose to come back. So that's not going to happen as much in the future. Teams are not going to be able to stockpile as much talent. You saw it this year. You've seen it flatten out. And even if it doesn't flatten out all the way into every league, it's going to flatten out in the Big Ten and the SEC. So that's why the pressure's on them to because the other teams aren't like them, and we may never see a team like that again.
Okay, there's a question in the chat that I want to get to, but first I'm going to put it up there in a second. But first I want to ask you, when you say national title or bust, Andy, because Ohio State fans said national title or bust.
It's a completely unfair expectation. I readily admit that.
What does it mean when you bust?
It means we're kind of mad, but we're not going to go off the deep end. No, Ohio State's different because their standard is higher than everyone else's, and deservedly so. They've earned that over the years. But it's still not. I will go ahead and say it because I say this all the time. Like, don't tell the consumer what they want. Like when you have all these SEC teams where they feel like the coach's job is to win the national title, it is to win the national title as long as they think that. It's the AD's job to have reasonable expectations. So, yeah, you're crazy if you're mad because this team fell a game short or gets the national title game and loses. Like, you're crazy if you're mad about that, but it's okay. You're the consumer. You can want what you want.
I think this is
where
good.
The decision makers are the ones that need to make sure they're not the crazy ones, and I don't think they are.
It's a good segue into this, Andy, from K Supreme in the chat. Why are teams like Ohio State forced to have such high expectations, but teams like Penn State are forced to lower their own?
No one's forcing Penn State to lower their expectations. The circumstances have caused Penn State to have lower expectations. If Penn State is beating Ohio State regularly, their expectations rise. If Penn State is beating Ohio State regularly on the recruiting trail, their expectations rise. You decide your own expectations. That's not actually, that's a great segue into our next Dear Andy and Dear Ari question. It's from Jim. Has the expanded college football playoff changed what is the criteria for a successful season? Making the semifinals this year for a team feels more significant this year than being 1 in the 4 in the past. I think it depends on who your team is. I think it depends on what you've done. For Ohio State, it's different than Penn State. And that goes into K Supreme's question. It's different because the circumstances are different. If Penn State suddenly starts beating Ohio State on the reg, then Penn State's expectations will rise and Ohio State's will fall.
Do you think that making that's an interesting question, because I don't know if I agree with the premise that making the Final Four this year feels more significant than in the past.
I don't think it feels any more significant. I think we've seen you more. You're more in our face because we watched you play more games. But
if Penn State would have made the 14 field, that would have been a monumental. I think that would have been more impactful because of what they would have had to do in order to get there. Like, Penn State was able to be who they always are and still get here. In the past, to get to the Final Four, they would have had to beat Ohio State, Michigan, won the Big Ten most likely, and played their way in. So, like, I think that Penn State getting here is great. I would push back at the notion that this is more significant or more impressive.
Yeah, I don't think it's more significant or more impressive. I just think it depends on where you're at. Like, if Wisconsin makes the Final Four, it's monumental. If Arizona State had won and made the Final Four, that's monumental. The expectations at Arizona State and the standard at Arizona State are different than the standard at Ohio State. Now, and this also works if you've had the success and now you don't have it anymore. So, like, for example, some of the teams in the SEC that expect big things, but they have not had the results they've wanted for several years, like Auburn and Florida. We talked about them yesterday when we were talking about the way too early top 10. Auburn and Florida just making the playoff, if they were to do that in 2025, would be a massive accomplishment. There have been periods in those schools' history where that wouldn't be anything. We'd be like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. But now, because of the circumstances, it would be a massive accomplishment. It's not for Ohio State.
Yeah. And also, too, I think that the fan expectations, K Supreme, are also very much in line or aligned with, I should say, the administration's expectations and how they go about their jobs, right? Like at Ohio State, if a coach existed there for as long as James Franklin did without ever hitting the ceiling, and then they offered him a 10-year God contract, that can't happen. So I think that your administration, to a certain extent, puts you in a position of like having to accept what the expectations are, right? Like, Andy, can you imagine Ohio State handing out a contract like that to somebody who hadn't beaten Michigan in 9 years? Like, it just would never happen. We
saw John Cooper, like it happened, and that was a different era. Like that,
and he got much longer than anybody else
yeah.
would have gotten, in this modern era. So, like, I mean, I don't know. I guess Ryan Day is getting into year 7 next year or year 6?
But John Cooper didn't win any national titles, and Ryan Day might have one.
Yeah.
In
well, that
11 days.
Yeah, right.
So.
But the expectations that you are given correlate, Andy, with the results that you have. I agree with that, but I also think the results that you have also correlate with what the administration's willing to pay for and how they're willing to go about their jobs too, right? Like, they're all connected.
Point. This is a great point. And somebody actually brought this up to me on Twitter this week, talking about asking, could we talk a little deeper about Penn State and the administration and how different that is? Because I will agree, this particular fan, they were coming from a place of saying that Penn State's administration has not been as helpful to football as Ohio State's administration, as Alabama's administration, as Georgia's administration. And I agree wholeheartedly. Like, prior to Pat Kraft becoming the AD at Penn State did not act like a school that wanted to win at football. Pat Kraft, since he's gotten there, has made them much more of a place where they really want to win at football, and they act like it now.
Yeah. James Franklin, I think, is funny because people want to fire him. And I think you have to, or did want to, I don't know about anymore, but you have to ask yourself, Andy, like, what's the ceiling of the program? And maybe the ceiling is higher than James Franklin took him, and is winning 10 games every year, because also winning 10 games every year is hard. There aren't a lot of coaches who do it, right? And
very hard.
Penn State is a top 12 program in America without question, right? Like, so
yes,
when you say it like that, it's like, well, being a top 12 program is something that a lot of people want to be. And when James Franklin was hired, I don't remember this, maybe you do, but the day that James Franklin was hired, if you would have told them you'd be 10 years straight of being a top 12 program in America, given what happened there and everything, you'd probably be like, that'd be great. Like has James Franklin exceeded expectations from day one?
Especially when he got hired. Remember, he got hired in the middle of the sanctions. So
exactly. Yeah, so what I'm saying is
they would have leapt for joy at what, if you told them what the overall record would be and the level of success of the program. I think they'd want a little more postseason success. But I think in general, given where they were when he was hired, they'd be like, yeah, we'll take that.
So when he was hired, what were Penn State's expectations? And then 8 years into his deal,
what
were Penn State's expectations?
When he was hired was keep all the players and hopefully have a decent over 500 season when he was hired, because they were in a tough spot, because they were, dealing with sanctions that we didn't know they were going to be lifted. There were lawsuits that got them lifted. So they were dealing with a pretty tough recruiting situation that Bill O'Brien and James Franklin, to their credit, worked through and did a great job working through. And Bill O'Brien, I think, probably deserves a lot of credit for keeping that program afloat the way he did.
And this is what I struggle with, though, Andy. This is what I struggle with. It's like, has Penn State come short of their standard, or have they come short of Ohio State's standard? Whose standard is it? Like that's
Penn. I think there's a certain segment of Penn State fans who would like their standard to be the same as Ohio State's. It's just not, because they haven't earned it. They haven't earned it.
But it never will
be a standard like that.
Well, it never will be.
It can
until
be.
It
absolutely can
finish.
Yeah,
I'm saying it never will be until the administration buys into it being that.
But I think they're there. I think since Kraft got there, they are an administration that wants to win at football, that is going to act like a big-time Big Ten program and win at football. Like that is, and now that's completely subjective. You can disagree with that if you want. But just knowing what was there before and talking to people around that program and knowing what it's like now, they're in a much different and better place. Now, they're still not like Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia. Still not there yet. But I think they're moving that direction.
Here, real quick, Andy. Noah. Sup, fellas? Ohio State -3.5. Penn State plus money line plus 232. Thoughts? Thank you.
Penn State money line, baby. It's a coin flip game.
Love the Ohio State number. We'll see about the Penn State thing. Yeah. Okay. Going to the good luck, Noah. Pulling for you. Did
he buy that down? Did he buy that?
Yeah, it must have been an alternate line, which is why the odds are a little bit lower than they would have been. But yeah.
Very interesting. So, all right. Let's talk Ohio State, Texas now. Our friends at PrizePicks have put out their squares for this game. If you're not playing PrizePicks already, download that app. Use the code Staples when you sign up. Play $5, get $50 instantly. Let's look at Will Howard 250.5 passing yards. I want to talk about Will Howard, Ari, because I was on with our friends Gabe Eichert and Teddy Lehman, the Oklahoma Breakdown podcast. They do a great job. We were talking semis here, and obviously Oklahoma saw Will Howard a lot when Oklahoma was in the Big 12 and Will Howard was playing for Kansas State. And Gabe and Teddy were talking about how they didn't realize that he could throw the way he's throwing now. And I think, part of it is throwing to Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka, but you and I were there for the Tennessee game. There was a throw in the Tennessee game that he made. It was one of the touchdown passes to Jeremiah Smith. I was like, oh my God, that's one of the most perfect balls I've ever seen. Like, where did that come from?
The Egbuka ball in the Rose Bowl was the best throw he's had all year, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Can I give you just a saucy bonus take for Wendy's real quick?
Sure. We love to double up on the Wendy's and PrizePicks, two of our favorites.
I had a dream last night, and it wasn't a weird dream, but I woke up this morning and it hit me right when I woke up, and I don't know why, but I was like, if Miami would have gotten Jeremiah Smith, would they have won the national title this year?
Their defense still wouldn't have been better. So
I don't think they would have been able to be stopped.
They'd have made a run for sure, but they might have run up against a team that could score with them. That would have been the stumbling
I'm just
block
trying
there.
to think Restrepo, Ward, Jeremiah.
Miami, Oregon in that scenario. The Miami, Oregon game in that scenario might have ended 65-63.
Yeah. It's just an interesting thought. But the reason why I'm saying this is that I think that Will Howard is who he was supposed to be in the sense of above average player. I don't know if he's a truck or a trailer to keep, I love using that.
Cody Belair, thank you for that analogy.
Yeah, that's actually Daniel Jeremiah's original thought.
Well, thank you, Daniel Jeremiah. Move the sticks.
But I had to call Cody Belair yesterday to make sure what was the origin of that, because I used it in my story about yours on 3 yesterday. But I don't know what you think he is. I would think he's more of a trailer, personally. I don't know that I feel like Will Howard is the driving force behind Ohio State's offense. I think he's a cog in the wheel.
Was he a truck? Was he a truck in the Penn State game? Because I think he was. That's the one game of this season that I would say he was a truck.
Yeah.
Because I think without him playing the way he did, I don't think they win the game.
Yeah. I mean, Ohio State went on a 7-minute running drive at the end of that game to ice it out that I can't remember if he carried it or not.
He kept a few. He moved the chains a couple times.
What I'm saying is I would rather have Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, and Carnell Tate than Will Howard. The people that he's throwing it to. I think Will Howard, the fact that he can make great throws is an important aspect to this, but he goes only as far as his receivers take him. So that to me is if you want to talk about Ohio State in the same breath in terms of total talent that teams like 2020 Bama had and 2019 LSU had. And I would be very curious, maybe in the offseason we can discuss what you think Mac Jones was. Was Mac Jones a truck or a trailer? I mean, he got taken in the first round of the NFL draft, so he must have been. I mean, that must have been a
that
truck,
receiving core. That receiving core was insane, though. Devontae Smith had maybe the best season we've ever seen a receiver have.
But I feel like it's more of a running Mac Jones situation than it really is a Joe Burrow situation, right? And I think
I think that's a fair comparison. I think that's very fair, and that's fine. Mac Jones won a national title.
Yeah, and I think that Ohio State brought him in with the understanding that, hey, if we do everything that we can do with him at quarterback, it's going to be fine. But it is kind of a bizarre situation for Ohio State to be in, because as well as Will Howard has been playing and throwing the ball, it's also the first time in 10 years that they haven't had a first-round quarterback playing right? I mean, I guess last year they had Kyle McCord, but who knows what that's going to turn into. So,
Syracuse trying to get another year from McCord right now. We'll see what happens.
It is an interesting thing, and this is a comment that comes into it, Andy, here from Jay Weiser. Why is Will Howard projected as a 3rd to 5th round pick despite being 6'4" and having a pretty mid draft class? And I think it is interesting that he has his size and athleticism is exciting.
Yeah,
but it's just there's not. I mean, I just don't look at him and go, that's an NFL guy.
Well, I mentioned some beautiful throws, but he doesn't make them consistently enough. Because if he did, there would be no question about who the first quarterback off the board was. But instead, it's going to be Shedeur or Cam Ward because they do make those throws consistently.
Yeah,
so
and it's easy to mask when everybody on your team is a first-round draft pick how good you are when you're a distributor. So
now I want to bring up, while we're talking prize picks here, I want to bring up one other person. It's one of our favorite people to watch, Bert Auburn, the Texas kicker. They do not have field goals made square for Bert Auburn, but they do have a kicking points. So that would be field goals plus extra points. 5.5 for Bert Auburn. Ari, how do we feel about Bert Auburn after the Peach Bowl? That was a tough spot. I don't know, because kickers are different mentally. I don't know if the heart-to-heart pep talk from Steve Sarkisian was helpful before the shtoink at the end of regulation. You think Steve Sarkisian leaves Bert Auburn alone? I feel like I'm hitting more than if Steve Sarkisian's like, you know what? I'm going to let Bert cook. He's going to be okay.
It was 5.5 points total. So extra points count?
Extra points and field goals, yeah. Feeling pretty good about that, right?
Yeah, my favorite bet of the entire weekend, if we want to give out well, here, let's go back first to Bert Auburn. You know what I think is crazy?
What's that?
I think it's crazy that these teams spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on coaching staff, facilities, recruiting, resources. And none of these teams have kicking coaches. So it's do you think Steve Sarkisian will leave him alone? Steve Sarkisian doesn't know anything about kicking. You want to know why?
The problem.
Coaches don't know anything about kicking.
And kickers are weird. Kickers will tell you themselves that they're weird.
Because when you think about it,
you can't motivate them the same way you motivate other football players.
Somebody in my family, my cousin Kyle, was a kicker at Ohio University, and was a punter and a place kicker. And I grew up with this kid, and the clinics, the personal coaches, the hours out there spent on technique. A kicker knows everything in their head.
My guy Brandon Cornblue, who trains kickers, there's not many of those. There are not many people qualified to teach kicking.
And when you get to a certain point as a kicker, you know everything. It's not quarterback where you go work with Quincy Avery all offseason and he's teaching you new you know the steps, you know the pace, you know how you strike the ball. There's 25 they coach themselves, Andy. If you've ever been to a spring practice, which you've been to a million of, have you ever seen a coach instructing a kicker? So when this happens,
listen, when I was a walk-on, I hung out with the long snappers, Ari. So what those people do at practice is so different than anybody else.
They're not even in practice. Right. They're at practice, but they're practicing off to the side. So when it's will you leave Bert Auburn alone? He better. What's he gonna do? Tell him to swing better?
That's the thing. When I saw Sark giving him the heart-to-heart before that field goal at the end of regulation, I was like, no, don't do this.
Don't talk to him.
You're icing him worse than Kenny Dillingham ever could.
Just let him go out there and do his process, because 90% of kicking is just mental.
Yeah. And listen, Bert Auburn, I'm not worried about his confidence. You've seen the man's hair.
Yeah.
Anybody who's rocking hair like that is confident.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, you're right.
Bert Auburn's packing so much confidence.
The question is, how did he get enough confidence to get that hair? And I'll let you decide.
He's packing all the confidence in the world. So I'm not worried about Bert Auburn's confidence. I am worried about Steve Sarkisian talking to Bert Auburn. And I do want to give a shout out here. I think we may have mentioned this on the show that day, but the two equipment managers from Arizona State, because each team sends an equipment manager to the other side, or sends equipment managers to the other sideline with a box of balls, so that when the official needs a ball and they're close to that sideline, they can just hand them the ball. Because each team, the teams have different footballs. Each team brings its own footballs. The Arizona State ball girls walking in front of Bert Auburn's practice kicking net as he was addressing the ball. That is devastating mental warfare right there. That is savvy veteran moves right there.
Yeah. Yeah. But do you think Texas is going to be scoring a lot of points in this game?
Well, they better, because I don't think they have any other choice. I think they better score a lot of points in this game. If for nothing else than to give their defense a break, because having to cover Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Buka is exhausting, especially when Ohio State is actually throwing to them. And guess what? They're actually throwing to them now. So Bird Auburn, 5.5. More or less, you decide. Download that PrizePicks app. Use the code STAPLES. Play $5, get $50 instantly when you sign up using that code STAPLES. Ari, we have a couple more questions to answer. This one's from Dane. I find this fascinating because, one, because of the conversation we had yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
And two, so Dane says, what is the potential impact of a successful Bill Belichick campaign in year one of his tenure at UNC? And I'm going to flip Dane's question a little bit into, like, what is success for Bill Belichick in year one at North Carolina? But also, like, Tom Brady's going to help the Raiders hire their head coach. Now, I've got some folks last night telling me that it's just a smokescreen, that he's not really going to try to hire Bill Belichick. But until I see the Raiders hire a head coach, I'm not out on the idea of Tom and Bill trying to reunite in Vegas. Like, are we sure he's going to be North Carolina's head coach this year? Are we positive?
I guess, like, if you just, like, ask yourself, if the Raiders offer him the job, forget the Tom Brady stuff, forget all that stuff. If a NFL franchise offers him a job, will he take it?
I think he would. It's $10 million. Most NFL teams, that's, if they can find that in their couch cushion, that's the buyout if he wants to leave. But I think Bill can actually afford that himself. So if he really wants back in the NFL, yeah, I would think he can do it if he wants to. It's interesting because The Athletic had a story that came out later yesterday after all the Bill Belichick smoke started coming out, where it was more throwing dirt on Belichick and saying that he froze out his assistants that he didn't think were loyal. So the more I think about it, the more I think he is probably going to coach North Carolina this year. But again, until I see all the jobs filled, I'm not putting anything out of the question.
I'm going to let you take the question, though, Andy, because I have no idea what success is. Because it's kind of funny to think that, like, 10-2 is like,
yeah.
Well, what Mac Brown did 2 years ago? Like, I mean, like, I don't. What's success?
Well, that's the thing you have to consider. So Larry Fedora won 11 games in 2015. That team was really good. That was Marquise Williams. The Trubisky's on the roster, but he's not starting yet. Marquise Williams was a starting quarterback. They played a really fun ACC championship game against Clemson that year. Like, they were good, but then they couldn't keep it going. They went 8-5, 3-9, 2-9 after that. So Mac was 6-7 this year, but the 4 years prior to that, 8-4, 6-7, 9-5, 8-5. So, like, the idea that if you
did they not win 10 games any of those years?
No, they went 9-5 in 2022. But the idea that you can just they made the title game.
Oh, I thought they won 10 games that year. No.
The idea that you can just win 8 games every year at North Carolina that builds your statues wrong. It's not true. You're going to have to dip into double digits every once in a while. So, like, what is success? Year one, I'd say improvement. That would be 8 or 9 wins. But eventually, and I mean fairly quickly, they want to be into double digits. They want to be competing for playoff berths. They want to be competing for the ACC title game. Like, North Carolina views itself as elite in the ACC, even though the football results don't match that.
Yeah. I guess he said year one in the question, though. So, like, I guess like year one, if he wins 9 games, that'd be exciting.
I think that would be exciting if he upgrades the talent. If it looks like he's able to manage talent in this era of college football, which, one of the reasons you hire Bill Belichick is college football is a lot more like the NFL used to be, and perhaps he's more equipped to navigate that than people who've been in college football all their lives. We will see. I don't know the answer to that. But I think you're right.
The fun of the Belichick situation is the intrigue of, like, the unknown. Like, I think when a coach gets hired, it's so easy to identify what they need to do, how they need to do it, what they're going to do, and what success looks like. And I think that this is, like, the weirdest hire ever. And
yes, I think that's
really
the best way to describe it.
I think it's a very exciting hire because of the name recognition. But like, I don't know what his motivation for this is. I don't know what he thinks is success. I don't know what North Carolina is expecting from him. I don't know where their fans are. Like, I feel like I think my talent in this business is being able to talk directly to fan bases because I have a general sense of like how they're feeling. Like, I have no idea like where North Carolina
How they
is. Like,
feel.
I kind of feel like I feel like I'm like in the middle of the Blair Witch Project right now. Like, we're gonna watch it and we'll analyze it, but like it's like even with Colorado, it's like
is Bill Belichick the guy standing in the corner at the end? Sorry, spoilers. I know, but it's an old movie.
Yeah, that movie wasn't scary. It just made me sick. It was just everyone's nose.
We're spinning around so much.
Yeah, it's just like you know what movie was scary for me when I was a kid?
The Ring.
Have you ever seen Helter Skelter?
I have not seen Helter Skelter.
Okay, it's about Charlie Manson.
It's about the Manson family. Yeah.
It used to scare the shit out of me because, like, I'm scared of things that actually occur in this world, not ghosts and goblins and Lord of the Rings. But we, I don't know what we're doing here. So you like with Colorado last year, it's like, yeah, well, they were the worst, or 2 years ago. The worst program in the country. They're just taking a swing at anything that sticks as a success. And it's like Deion has exceeded those expectations tenfold. But like I think we knew like Deion, where they were and what Deion could provide. Like that, like I think we had a good feel for that. Like that made sense to me. I liked that hire. This is like either gonna be, and I think we said this about Deion too, but like a incredible success or like not even I don't think it's going to be an epic failure. I think it's just going to be boring. Like, what if it's just like 8-4 3 years in a row? And he's like, this is stupid. I don't want to do it anymore. Like, I don't know. Like that's to me, like, I don't think they're going to go 2-10, but boring. Like, there's been no, like, I mean, I know he took a picture of a barbecue restaurant and posted it on his
That wasn't him. That wasn't him.
Or whatever.
That was a parody account.
Has there been it was?
Yeah, that wasn't even him. He's putting a suit on and going around all these high schools.
Yeah.
So he's doing the dance, the one that you say Deion should be doing. And it's weird to me because like Bill Belichick he does move the meter. I mean, nobody moves it like Deion does. But of all the head coaches in college football right now, like if Bill Belichick walked into your high school, I think everybody's going nuts.
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised that the response is as subdued as it is.
It's been boring so far. I mean, has there been a huge recruiting splash yet?
Now, look, if we go with Bill Bell, I think Bryce Baker is going to be really good, but Bryce Baker was committed to Mac, and he only looked around because they fired Mac. He was coming to North Carolina. So Bill Belichick got there. They talked. He signed. This is the quarterback from Greensboro. He was at the Elite Series event last year. Really fun meeting him and his parents. Those guys, like this is a dude that is determined to succeed and wasn't one of those guys who was looking for the biggest bag, wanted to stay close to home, wanted to play for his home state school. So like I think that's the huge boost for Bill Belichick, even if he didn't have much to do with it. He's going to be real happy that worked out for him. But yeah, you're not seeing any sort of major earth-shattering thing. Now, part of it is this is the beginning of the 26 recruiting cycle. So we're not even going to see commitments until March and April.
Yeah. But I'm kind of excited to experience the ride, and we'll analyze it as we go. But like, I'm having a hard time answering that question. So I appreciate the question, but I think the intrigue and the unknown is what's beautiful about this. So we'll stay on top of it, though.
So Ari has a heart out today for those who want a little peek behind the curtain. Dallas, the whole city shuts down if there's like a flake of snow,
Schools are closed.
Childcare is closed. Like Ari is on daddy daycare duty right now. Like, if Liv joins the show, I'm happy with that because she's adorable and she's awesome and I love her. So I'm happy if she wants to come on the show.
Where's Andy?
Exactly. But that means we got to wrap up pretty soon. It's okay. We're going live after the Orange Bowl tonight. You're gonna see plenty of us. We're gonna be up in your faces after the Orange Bowl, after the Cotton Bowl. So I'm going to the Orange Bowl tonight. I don't know. I might just stay out by the pool all day. This is pretty tremendous. But one more question. And it's more of a complaint from our friend Steve.
Oh, no.
Hi, Andy. I enjoy the show, but damn it, I am sure you guys know that Jerry World is in Arlington, a city of 400,000 population, not even in Dallas County, If you fly to DFW, you still might be in Tarrant County. Just saying, please inform your fellow sports writers of these facts. Thanks, Steve. Steve, I'm going to address Steve. Steve may be watching. He may be listening on podcast later. Ari, you can fill in for Steve. I'm going to have you play Steve. Are you ready?
Am I supposed to be
Steve.
mad about whatever Steve's mad about?
Yeah, you're a resident of the area. You can be mad.
Yeah. Arlington's not Dallas, Andy.
Steve, what do they call the team that plays in AT&T Stadium regularly?
The Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, they don't call them the Arlington Cowboys.
No.
What about the team that plays baseball in the stadium next door? What do they call them?
The Texas Rangers.
Oh, they don't call them the Arlington Rangers. Interesting. No. Okay. I'll tell you what, Steve, I'll make you a deal. When Jerry Jones calls them the Arlington Cowboys, I will say that Jerry World's in Arlington and not in Dallas. You're in a suburb. Get over it. Like, when people ask me where I grew up, I say Orlando because they don't know where Longwood is. Like, everybody in the country knows where Orlando is, but they don't know where Longwood, Florida is.
How many stadiums are actually in the city that's on the jersey?
Not as many as you'd think. Well, like
some are in downtown
New York or East Rutherford, New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Like it's in a different state. It's a different state.
Yeah.
Yeah. Raljon, Maryland, where the Commanders play. Like the good thing about college football is at least the stadiums are in the city they're supposed to be in.
Yeah. Well, that's also kind of confusing sometimes too.
The Steelers are downtown. The Bengals are obviously very much in Cincinnati, which
Cleveland's
is interesting.
Downtown, but like
so little in Cincinnati's actually even in Ohio.
San Francisco's not in San Francisco.
Right, they're in Santa Clara. So
are either LA teams? One's in Inglewood and one's in
it's the Inglewood LA thing, like because Inglewood, like when you cross the border into Inglewood, they've got the sign that says Inglewood City of Champions. So
yeah. I just feel like, I mean, it's just kind of the same thing. Like Landis, come here, Livy. I want everyone.
I knew we were gonna get Liv on the show today.
We're getting off here, but you can say goodbye.
Tell her not to cuss. I know she's got a potty mouth.
Come here, baby. You want to come say hi to Andy? Okay. All right, guys. That's it. She's got shy. Livy, they wanted to see you, babe.
Oh, she doesn't want to be on TV. It's all right.
Okay.
I understand.
That's okay.
She doesn't have the bug like her dad, but that's okay.
She will. Trust me, she will. But I love the show. I can't wait to get together with you tonight after the game. Enjoy it, Andy.
I can't wait. This is going to be so much fun. Just seeing some new blood around, seeing the Penn State fans, seeing the Notre Dame fans. I've had multiple friends from both schools who say, "Oh, we're tailgating tonight. The weather's going to be beautiful, as you can see. It's gorgeous out here. It's actually a little chilly for South Florida. Like this is the level of South Florida weather. Like I think it's 55 degrees with a slight breeze right now. This is where they turn on the gas heaters at all the restaurants.
And the 55 and sunny is just the best. That's
South Florida does not handle cold well, but tonight they're going to handle it great. You got the Golden Domes, Penn State. My friend Spencer Forden, I always remember how he described Penn State, the football team. He would talk about the Sugar Bowl when they played Big Bad Herschel Walker, and there's Penn State with just a stripe down its helmet. That's it. Golden Dome, Penn State with just a stripe down his helmet. Come on. Who doesn't love this?
I'm excited.